The Consulting Success podcast is powered by the Clarity Coaching Program. If you'd like to work directly with the Consulting Success team and receive personal coaching and support to optimize and grow your consulting business, marketing, and revenue, visit consultingsuccess.com to find out more and apply.
Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business.
Hey everyone, it is Michael Zapersky here, and we are back for another episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. And today, I am very excited to have Lisa Rehurek joining us. Lisa, welcome.
Thank you, Michael. So happy to be here.
Yes, we were just talking about our connection because it wasn't that long ago that I was on your podcast. I feel like I know you a little bit. I'm really excited to have you on. But before I tell everybody why I'm so excited, I'll just do a quick little intro here. And Lisa, so you are an author, you're a speaker, you're the founder and CEO of the RFP Success Company, where you help organizations to win more RFPs, right? No surprise there, given the name of your company. I like that. Very clear, very direct. You've been featured in many places in the media, Fox News, ABC, NBC, all that good stuff. And then, as mentioned, you run your own podcast called the RFP Success Show, where you really help people to learn more about the world of RFPs and how they can navigate it. And that's actually really why I'm so excited to have you on, because RFPs is an area that many consultants find themselves considering or they're deep into. And it can be a pretty murky place with a lot of, kind of dangerous gators and all kinds of other swamp creatures and big logs that could hit you over the head as you're trying to navigate those murky waters. But you help people to do that. You help people to kind of avoid the common mistakes and at the same time to achieve a lot more success in the world of RFPs. So that was a pretty long introduction. I'm rambling on, but I'm excited to have you on. So Lisa, a big welcome to you.
Thank you, Michael. Again, I'm really excited to be here too. And I'm probably the only person in the world that can say that I love talking about RFPs, but I love everything RFPs. So I'm ready for you.
Look, good stuff. All right, let's get right into it. And I do want to get into that meaty stuff to make this a very kind of tactical, actionable episode for people who either are already in the world of RFPs so that we can help them to be more successful, but also for those who maybe are considering the world of RFPs, as well as those that should just never even get close to touching RFPs for one reason or another. And you can help to illuminate what those reasons may or may not be. But I always like to kind of get started earlier on in your career in those guests that come on and, kind of where they got their beginning. So take us back to before you started your company. What were you doing?
Well, I have a bit of a sordid past. I have a long past because I tried so many different things in my life, but I started in kind of the hotel business. That's what I got a degree in, hotel restaurant management. And I worked in hospitality for a while in hotels and got my fingers in the pot a little bit of RFPs. I thought I knew everything there was to know about RFPs in the hotel business. But in the hotel business, it's like, tell us how many rooms you have available, tell us your rates, and then maybe tell us a little bit about your amenities. Then I went to work for a global consulting firm, Mercer, and they asked me if I'd ever worked in RFPs. And I was like, sure, yeah, totally. I know all about them. And they dropped this 300-page RFP on my lap. And I was like, that is not at all what I was used to. So I worked in that global consulting firm in numerous different capacities, including RFPs, for about 11 years. And then I left there to start some businesses with an ex-colleague, worked in those businesses for 3 years, including employee benefits and some discount benefit plans, and then decided to go out on my own about 11 years ago now. And here I am.
And how did you end up selecting RFPs to build your business around? Because you could have done many different things. You could have gone off, done more employee benefits or just some other general, more consulting work. But you actually narrowed in. Like you said, I'm going to be the RFP person. Why do that?
Because I tried so many different things. I'll be honest with you. I did a lot of different things coming out of the other businesses that I had because I wanted to be a general consultant. I am kind of a jack of all trades. There's a lot of different things that I can do. And that's what I tried to hang my hat on, but it doesn't really work. It's really hard to get business that way because nobody knows what to hire you for. People need tangibility, right? They need something they can sink their teeth into. And I was struggling. I mean, my business, I had a really nice high-level consultant consulting firm that had hired me to do jack of all trades stuff. But then they basically called me one day and said, no more. And I was out of business. So I was clawing myself back, and people kept calling me from my past saying, hey, can you help with this RFP? Do you still do stuff with RFPs? And I'm like, sure, I'll do anything, right? I needed work. Then I remember being out to dinner with a friend, and she said, you keep talking about finding a niche. I think it might have found you. And then I just started testing the waters. And sure enough, there was definitely a need out there for it. And so I branded the RFP Success Company, and the rest is history.
I'm just thinking you're probably one of the first Americans that I've ever heard say niche. Usually it's always niche. Where does that come from?
I don't know. Maybe I've been listening to you enough.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Okay, so that makes sense in terms of progression. You said you tried a lot of things. Did you have any hesitation, any fear to narrow in to such a specialized level of just saying I'm the RFP? Like that's the direction I'm going to go?
So much so. And it's so funny because thinking back now, so there's still fear because we continue to niche even further, right? And I have the same thoughts, but now when I look back to the fears that I had before, it's laughable because my first fear, irrational fear, was that there wasn't enough business. Like, well, there isn't enough business out there, which is ridiculous because there is. But when you're in it, you can't see it, right? And every year we continue to hone in on who is our target, how can we get even tighter with it? And I'm scared every time we do it, but I know it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, definitely. It is such a challenge. I think narrowing in on an ideal client and being very specific is probably one of the most challenging areas for anybody in business. But what you just hit on is so important, I think, for all of our listeners and community to know, and they've likely heard this many times before, so no surprise. But it's the evolution of business. That is very rarely will you find a successful business that has the exact same clients today as they had when they got started and offering the exact same thing at the exact same price point. Like that business naturally evolves. And so asking yourself that question all the time is do you need to get more focused, more specialized? Is there a segment of your ideal client base that no longer is actually ideal? These are things that we as business owners always want to be asking ourselves. So I think that's really great that you're sharing that you're still going through that as we are, as everybody is.
Well, I like what you said about the evolution, right? Because for whatever reason, I think we believe that there's a destination for it, that someday we're going to have this nice, pretty document that lays out exactly who we serve and what we do. And it really is a continued evolution. And, hopefully you're not flipping the script every single month, year, quarter, or year, or whatever on everything, but you do have to evolve it and tweak it as you go because we learn more. So I like that word a lot, evolution, for sure.
Is RFPs just a numbers game?
I would say no. Actually, definitely not. I mean, I think that some people think that, or people will think, oh my gosh, I can go make $8 million if I just win this one RFP, but it's just a tool in your sales tool belt, right? It's just another way of selling, and you can't do it cold. If it's a numbers game and you're going for quantity over quality, you're going to lose.
Yeah.
100% of the time. Maybe you'll get lucky, but probably not.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you said that, because I think so often people do think that RFPs is just a numbers game, and you just have, the more you do them, one day you're going to hit the jackpot, right? And then it'll all be worthwhile. But if we dive deeper into that, what would you say are maybe the most common mistakes that consultants and those that you work with in the world of RFPs, or just that you've seen people make? What are the big errors that come up so often?
Yeah, great question. I would say that the number one biggest mistake is that you don't have a strategy to go with it. I shouldn't say you wouldn't, because plenty of companies probably do, but you wouldn't go out into the world and start selling without any sort of a strategy, right? You've got to have a business development strategy, and RFPs fits into that. So if you bid cold, like I mentioned a little while ago, you have less than a 5% chance of winning. So why would you do that if you didn't have a strategy around who is your target audience? Where does your solution best fit? And then start building those relationships. So people think because anybody can get a hold of this RFP and you can just respond to the questions that you have a leg up, but you can't get the content down in a compelling way. All you're going to be doing is answering the questions, and you're going to be level set with everybody else. You're going to be maybe meeting the qualifications and capabilities, but unless you have a strategy that has relationship building in there, and you get to know the client and you get to know their hot buttons and you understand their environment and you understand the competitors and what you have to overcome from a competitive advantage and what your differentiators are. How can you write to any of that if you don't have a strategy around it? So that would be the number one thing. And then when it comes to content itself, there's a million things people do wrong. People rarely actually answer the question. It's shocking how often people don't actually answer the question as it was asked, or they don't answer all parts of the question. They make it all about them instead of the solution that they provide and how that's going to help the client. Michael, I'm sure that you have that conversation a lot around sales. It's not about you. It's not about you. It's not about you.
Yeah. Great tips there. I think it might be helpful for everybody if, you talked about the kind of the cold RFP. What are the different categories? Like, so cold is one. Is there a progression, or how do you think about the different types of approaches or categories of the RFP business?
Yeah, I mean, I would say probably 4. One is cold. You don't know anything about them. They don't know you. You don't have a relationship. The second one is warm, where you've had some involvement with them, some interaction. They know who you are, but it's not necessarily a super intimate relationship. The third is where you actually have involvement in helping them craft the RFP. That's a beautiful place to be, right? And then the fourth would be the incumbent. You have the contract and you just, I say with air quotes, have to win it back. And those would be the 4 categories that I'd put it into.
That's really helpful. So for those who are maybe in kind of like category 1, category 2, so the buyer does not really know you very well, if they know you at all. I often hear the concern from a consultant or a small consulting firm that we're working on this RFP or we want to go after it, but we don't know the decision maker and we don't have access to them. It's a group, it's a body, it's just not one person. What should they do? How can a consultant start to build a relationship with the quote unquote buyer if they don't know who the actual buyer is? How do you counsel people to kind of navigate that?
The first thing that I'll say, because for whatever reason we get in our heads that it's different, it's not any different than any other sales avenue. No different, right? So if you're going to go out and sell direct to somebody, what do? You figure out who the decision maker is. You find out where you might be able to access them, or you find an internal advocate, somebody that is on the buying team or has influence over the decision maker. And then you start to build a relationship. In procurement, a lot of times you have a couple of different avenues. Yes, you should be talking to decision makers and all of that and building those relationships like you would in any other sales environment. But you also have the procurement arena, especially in public sector. So in public sector, you can actually, in private too, you can go to the procurement people and start to build a relationship with them. Now, with the procurement folks, and this is the same in regular sales too, right? You don't want to call them up and say, I have something to sell to you. You want to build a relationship and give them some value and get them to know you. And then there's a third avenue as well in the private sector. If you are a diverse small business, there's supplier diversity in a lot of companies these days and is becoming even more prevalent. And their job is to advocate for small businesses, small diverse businesses. So in some ways, you have even more avenues than you would if it was just a general sale.
Right. So that makes a lot of sense. You're saying essentially don't be lazy. Don't just say like, I don't know who the buyer is. This is not going to work. You're saying you're going to have to do a bit of homework. You might be searching on LinkedIn for who are the different executives or the most likely buyers. Maybe you ask questions. I'm really interested to know, what have you found are the best practices to actually go about building these relationships? So let's just take the example of, you want to put in an RFP. You don't really have a relationship. There might be a person in procurement that is the point of contact for that RFP, but you don't actually know beyond that person who the decision makers are. Your mind is telling you, if you try and ask to find out who the decision makers are, the procurement person will say, no, I'm the point of contact. How can somebody actually go about building a relationship in that kind of a situation?
Yeah. So when the RFP hits the desk, that it's all over. You have no time to build a relationship anymore. So this is why it goes back to that strategy, right? You've got to know who are your target clients, and you've got to start building that relationship long before the RFP hits your desk, because then you can't build it. It's too late. And I love how you said, don't be lazy. Don't be lazy. You got to get out there and do the work. And it's not easy and it's long. It'll take you a while. But if you want the business, that's just the game of business, right? And the game of sales. So you've got to get out there and do it. And you also can't be, do not, for the love of Pete, send salesy email on LinkedIn, right? Don't just go for the kill right away. You've got to build relationships. And the best way to do that is to let them know who you are, let them know what you do. I'd like to stay connected, and then send them some valuable information. Hey, I've got a best practices white paper that I think your team would like, or I just saw this article that I think might be relevant to what's going on in your industry right now. You've got to be very purposeful and strategic about it. And that's going to win the race. And I'll tell you, there's very few people that do this and do it well. So you'll be ahead of the game. I talk to procurement people all the time, supplier diversity people, buyers, and they tell me people don't know how to do this well. They just send us their capabilities brochure, say, I do this, call me when you're ready, and expect that they'll get a call. And it's not going to happen.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say is almost, if you see an opportunity for an RFP, but you don't have a relationship with that organization or with the key people there, if that RFP is already out, meaning that people can kind of bid or go through the process, is it fair to say, or are you saying that the consultant who is in that situation should probably not spend their time to try and go after that RFP because it's too late?
I will say the consultant should not expect to win that RFP. And the reason that I say it that way is because it might be an opportunity to strategically position yourself, to let them know you're there and to get in front of them. But the chance of you winning is going to be very small.
Love it. Okay.
Sure. We've seen it happen before, but I wouldn't count on it. So it could be a strategic reason to do that. But otherwise, I would, depending on time and resources that you have to do that, your choice.
While we work with a lot of seasoned and experienced consultants here at Consulting Success, I'm often contacted by new early-stage consultants. Invariably, the question I'm asked is, what are the steps I should take to become a successful consultant and grow my consulting business to my first 6 figures per year? Well, I'm excited to announce that we've opened the doors for our Momentum program. This is our most popular program for early-stage consultants, and it has helped almost 1,000 consultants to start, run, and grow successful consulting businesses. It gives you the step-by-step plan to help you with your messaging, your fees, and pricing strategies, how to win more proposals, how to go to market more effectively, developing a marketing system to generate leads consistently, and so much more. And right now, until September the 19th, you can sign up for Momentum and get 50% off the regular price by going to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO. Only 100 spots are available to join Momentum and get 50% off. This deal is only available until September the 19th or until all 100 spots are gone. We won't be opening up new spots in this program for several months, so don't wait. Go to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO.
How can people go about kind of determining whether an RFP is worthwhile for them to spend the time on? Like, what should they be looking at? Are there some criteria, some factors that you find are key in them doing that kind of evaluation?
Yeah, absolutely. We suggest every company, big or small, have assessment criteria laid out. And it's going to be different for every company, but some of it is, what are your deal breakers? So there's things like, there's a limits of liability clause in the terms and conditions that you won't work with. Sometimes they require performance bond, or the insurance requirements are too high. You need to look at things like, do they require staff on site in a state across the nation when you don't have staff over there? So there's a whole bunch of things you should look at before. Can you deliver on the services? Do you have the resources? Is this the type of client you want to work with? I was working with a client once. This was so frustrating. We were working with a client. It was a huge, arduous RFP. And I remember the leader of the company saying to us, we should not even bid on this because we don't even want this work. And you're like, why are we bidding on it then, right? So those kinds of things that you should have a list. It should be a checklist, and you go through that and say yes or no. Are you going to bid on this? And it just helps guide the whole team into whether it's a right type of a project.
I want to explore for a moment the mindset. I mean, I'm always fascinated by mindset in business and just like in so many aspects of our lives. Is there a mindset that you found that is kind of key to being successful in the world of RFPs, or if RFPs are going to be a good kind of portion of your business?
I think one of the biggest mindsets is quality over quantity, right? Not going after every single thing that comes across the desk, understanding the strategic piece. I know I keep using that word, but the strategy behind why this is a good client for you, understanding your target audience in order to only go after that type of work. And you know, Michael, how hard it is for companies to stick to that because it gets exciting. And especially in an RFP where you can see like, this is worth $400,000, or this is exactly the type of work we want to do, but maybe the type of client is not in alignment. So there is definitely a mindset there. We talk about culture. Our clients that we love to work with that are the most successful have a really strong winning culture mindset in 4 areas. It's what we call our 4x4 framework. And it's strategy that I keep talking about and harping on. Process, like, are you committed internally to having a process that works for everybody and that you respect and are inclusive of everybody on the team? And then the people, which is also, don't just treat your proposal team like the ugly stepchildren. They are part of your sales team. And you've got to have that philosophy. And then finally, content and having the right mindset around being succinct and focusing on the client instead of yourself. So there's mindset around all of that that creates that winning culture. And if a company's not willing to do that, their mindset is not quite where we want it to be.
Got it. And is there kind of a situation in terms of the stage of a business or the size of a business where going after RFPs or even thinking about them as a path for revenue growth does not make sense? Like, take a solo consultant who might be generating a couple $100,000 or $500,000 a year or whatever it might be. I mean, maybe revenue is or is not a big factor in your mind, but if it's a solo consultant or, a small consulting firm with 1 or 2 or 3 employees, like, does it make sense for them to even be thinking about RFPs, or, do you need to have more people? Just kind of walk me through what you've seen in terms of success and best practices and where and when you would suggest that somebody does not think about RFPs.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to answer this in 2 different ways. The first one being, it goes back to your target audience. It's like when you've got your business development strategy and you say, our target audience is state governments for whatever reason, then of course you're going to have to go after RFPs, right? I have a couple of clients that do Medicaid consulting. Well, of course, that's going to be state government. They're going to have to go after RFPs. That's a given, right? On the corporate side, if you know who your ideal clients are and you call their procurement department and say, hey, talk to me about how you buy these types of services, they'll be able to tell you whether it's going to have to be RFP or not. And it's all over the board. Some companies say, anything under $100,000, we don't have to go out to RFP for, we can sole source. But a lot of large companies, if you're looking at like the, Disney, Verizon, Comcast, any of that, there's probably going to be an RFP involved depending on the size. So that's when you have to know who your target is and then get to know their environment. And then the third piece that I'll say is that if you, for some reason, are looking into the federal space, it's a whole other ball of wax. And so many people and this is US, I'm speaking specifically to US here, is that small businesses can go and get what's called an 8A certification. And they get very excited about that. They think I can go get this 8A certification and then I can go work for the federal government. And then they look for RFPs. And the best bet there for a small consultancy is to go find a partner that is already in the trenches with the federal government that you can partner with. And your role would be to build that relationship with the partner and get in that way versus going chasing after RFPs in the federal space. Usually they're too big for, us small people anyway, but some people get really excited about that. It's a recipe for disaster. And
where's the best place for people to go find these RFP opportunities? Are there certain databases, websites? What are some of the best places for people to explore this if they're interested?
For US government, for federal FedBiz Ops, which I feel like they changed their name. We don't do a lot in the federal space, but you can go to FedBiz Ops and that'll tell you. In the state space, you can go to Find RFP or BidSync. And then in the corporate space, there isn't anything. So you have to go to them. The best way, though, for all of it, again, I know I keep harping on this, but know who your target audience is and call them, call the state agency if that's what you're going to go after and say, how do I find out about your RFPs, and get on their list. And then you're building relationships with people. And then when they call you and say, we've got an RFP on the streets we want you to bid on, that's the best case scenario. Same with corporate. You get on their vendor lists. It's another reason to call them, another reason to get to know them. And then you're on their vendor list and they'll send you the RFP.
Right. So let's say somebody decides, okay, I am interested in moving forward with trying to generate more business coming from our RFPs. What have you seen as kind of the most common timeline, or like how long does it take to typically go from, all right, I'm going to start trying to build this RFP business and actually being able to win a considerable amount of RFPs?
I would say a couple of years, honestly. I would say that, it's going to take you 6 months just to get, like, who are we really going to target? How do we get on their vendor lists? How do we start seeing the RFPs that are coming out? And then everybody generally they have contracts with a lot of stuff already. So the contract that you might want might be, that somebody might have that right now and it's not up for renewal for another year or two. So it'll take a couple of years to really get into the groove with it. One thing, Michael, we always say is we would love for people to not ever have to respond to an RFP. I mean, the best case scenario is that you just build a relationship with your target and you work that and you sell it and you don't ever have to go to RFP. But the fact is, a lot of companies and entities require them. So it's a long game, just like any of it.
Definitely. And what about understanding your competition? I mean, how important is it in the actual RFP when you are responding to address the other competitors and other people that are likely also responding to RFPs?
We always say you don't really want to address their shortcomings or address what they don't do well. But what you want to do is understand your competitors enough so you know what they're going to come to the table with, so that you can come to the table with a better solution, or you can speak to it in a way that your competitors cannot. And it gives you that edge. That's that differentiator that you're speaking to. And if you don't know who your competitors are, then how will you know how they're going to present their experience, or how many years of experience they have, or how many team members they have that specialize in XYZ? It's really important to know that.
Yeah. And so what I'm hearing you say almost, Lisa, is you wouldn't call out and say, ABC company or XYZ company, is bad at this and that's why we're better. So you wouldn't talk negative about anyone. But if you understand and know that ABC might be deficient in a certain area, or that XYZ might tend to overcharge, you could word in or work in some language that would help the buyer to see the shortcomings of other organizations or like competitors without naming names, but opening up their mind and eyes to kind of positioning offer or your work in a better light. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, we suggest things like, we are the industry leader in, or, you'll find that other firms in our industry don't approach it in this way. And here's why we've chosen to do that. We also, especially if you're trying to unseat an incumbent, meaning there's somebody in there that has this work already and you're trying to take it away from them, that you plant seeds of doubt. And we like to do that in the way of questions. So questions that we know we can answer yes to, but our competitors would not be able to answer yes to. So there's a lot of strategy behind that. And again, if you're not in there and you don't know your potential client well enough, it's going to be really hard to do that.
Yeah, that's really powerful. The other question I had for you is just like in terms of delegation or the actual spending time, like RFPs take time. Right? It's not, you don't have to sit down, write a 1 or 2 page proposal, which is, what we often like to help our clients do, is like really to get the proposal process down into 3 pages or less. And ideally in a way that takes less than an hour, right? If you have some good productized offerings or things of that nature, RFPs are a very different beast, right? There's a lot more work that goes into it. What have you seen? Like, is this something that if I'm a consulting business owner and I have a team, should I be from day one trying to have a team member to kind of learn and own that skill set so that they can be the ones to do the RFPs? Or is this something that you typically find like the founder or the owner of the business should be doing themselves?
I don't think the founder or the owner should do it themselves. I feel pretty strongly about that, because when we look at an RFP, so you're going to get an RFP response that has anywhere between or an RFP that has anywhere between maybe 10 questions at minimum to 50 to 75 questions, right? You've got to have somebody tactical that can, number one, manage it. Like they can pull it all together, really read the requirements, have that attention to detail, make sure that they know how they're going to lay it out. Then you've got subject matter experts that are going to help fill in all the answers to those questions. We always recommend that there be a more I keep using the word, but a more strategic focus on it. And that is what the owner or the managing director, the founder, whatever, the CEO should really be looking at. Okay, have we really positioned ourselves correctly? So on the front end, what theme do we want? What is our win theme? What is our bidding strategy? All of that. And then on the back end, okay, let me read through what everybody's done, and I'll, make sure that we positioned ourselves appropriately and that we really have differentiated ourselves. That's what the role of the CEO should be. And then you should have a couple of other people in there really running interference, making sure everything's getting done. There's a lot to managing an RFP response. And you've got to have somebody that's got attention to detail that can be the sheep herder to pull everything together.
I love the way that you're sharing this, because it would be easy for somebody just to say, yeah, RFPs work for everybody. They're great. The reality is, right, there's a lot of work and thought that needs to go into it. Like many things in life, that often that hard work, that's what will create a really great result for you in the future. So for those organizations where an RFP kind of approach makes sense, right, it can be a really, really great investment into their business, but it does take time, does take preparation. But if you're playing the long game, it certainly might make sense. Is there anything, Lisa, that we didn't talk about yet from an RFP perspective? Any best practices, any mindsets, any just tactical stuff that you want to share with people that you think would be important for them to know if they're considering or if they're already, in the world of RFPs?
Yeah, I think the only thing that I'd say, and this is really reiterating something I've already said, is that you've got to understand how this is going to fit into your overall business development strategy and whether it's worth it, because you do have to have the right mindset. And it doesn't start when the RFP hits your desk, right? There's this whole strategy we've already talked about building relationships. And then when the RFP goes out the door, there's a lot of work to be done. How do you debrief to make sure that you understand why you won or lost? How do you debrief internally to make sure that the process is working well? You've got to have a pretty solid process internally if you're going to manage it there, unless you're going to outsource your RFP responses to somebody like us. But you still have to have skin in the game. So it just can't be a second thought. And we've had plenty of clients come across that are like, we can do this. We want to do it. We want to just outsource the whole thing to you. You can't do that either. You really do have to have a commitment to this being part of your business strategy. And how is that going to play out? So there's a whole lot of moving pieces that go with it.
Yeah. Probably have 3, maybe 4 more questions I want to ask you before. In terms of your business, I mean, you work with many different types of companies, helping them with RFP process and helping to win more RFPs. What's working for you right now to generate more leads, more inquiries, and more business for your company?
Referrals has been our number one source of, we always say that, right? Referrals is always a beautiful thing, but we do have a couple of lead sources. One actually out of the UK that does a lot of lead generation for us. They're probably the second largest one. They source through LinkedIn, but they don't message through LinkedIn. They've got a really slick process. And then we've got another person that we just hired to do some lead generation for us as well, in a little bit of a similar manner. And then, just obviously repeat clients and those referrals are always a beautiful thing.
And when it comes to referrals, is there anything that you're doing specifically, like any kind of intentional, proactive approach strategy to the actual referral process? Or is it more just you're doing great work, people tend to refer people to you?
It's a little bit weak for sure, but it's on our radar to make better. But when a client ends with us, when we finish an RFP with them, for example, we send them a questionnaire. And as part of that questionnaire, we ask them if they have any referrals. So we've got ongoing clients that we do like diagnostics for, and then we do all their RFPs for them. We don't send that questionnaire out to them every time. So those people we probably don't catch enough of. So yeah, it's a little bit weak, but it's not non-existent.
Okay. Well, you've identified an area to work on.
Yeah, I know. I was just thinking what about those long-term clients? Yeah.
Next. So in terms of your work, right, manage your company, your team, and just for you to be able to perform at the highest level and, to really make progress consistently, achieve success, what are one or two things you do on a regular, maybe daily basis, whether it is a habit, a principle, or a practice that you just feel really contributes to the impact that you're able to have?
I'd say a couple of things. One, just self-care, meditation. I do like to meditate, probably not in a super traditional way, but I like to meditate and I like to just clear my head because as business owners, we just get so stuffed with stuff in our heads, right? I love to read. And then, I have a business coach and a business cohort that helps kind of just keep me thinking bigger. And so I don't get complacent and that we continue to look for ways to improve the team internally and improve, what we deliver to our clients.
Yeah, I love it. So you mentioned reading, which is a perfect kind of transition to my next question. So over the last 6 months, what is the best book that you have read or listened to? Can be fiction or nonfiction.
So I only read nonfiction, and I read a book by Tim Grover, Winning. I really enjoyed that book. We are all about winning. That's like our mission here at the RFP Success Company, right? So I always like to read anything about winning. I thought that was a really great book. The book I'm reading right now that I just picked up is called Everything is Effed. And it's a book about hope. It's a it's a polarizing book, but so far I'm really loving this one. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm only about a chapter and a half in, but that one's kind of fun.
So Tim Grover, I think his previous book was Unstoppable or something along those lines. Really good books as well. So
I agree. I like that one as well. And I like this one just as much. So he's pretty in your face about what it takes. So
yes, he certainly is. He reminds me at times a little bit of like David Goggins, just the mindset, not at that level. David Goggins is at a whole other level. If anybody has not read David Goggins' book, You Can't Hurt Me, probably don't read it around any of your children. Certainly don't listen to it. If you don't like any kind of, vulgar words, it's filled with those, but it's a very powerful mindset book. So I highly encourage people to check that out as well if you haven't. Lisa, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing so much RFP knowledge here. This was a lot of fun, and I'm hoping it'll be quite valuable to many people that are tuning in and checking this out. I want to make sure that people can learn more about you and your work. Where's the best place for people to go?
I would say go to our website, therfpsuccesscompany.com, follow us on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm just Lisa Rehurek, and I'm the only Rehurek out there, or the only Lisa Rehurek out there, I would say. And we're happy to, help and connect in any way we can. And Michael, I really appreciate having the opportunity to be on your show.
Thanks for joining.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. For more episodes and to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, head on over to iTunes. And if you'd like to develop consistent lead flow and a highly profitable consulting business, learn more about our coaching programs at consultingsuccess.com.